It's the Tune In with Power Psychology. Find your joy again with your host, Brittany Meredith, on the Health and Wellness Channel on TVU. How you doing, Brittany?
Good, how are you?
Very good, very good. And we have another interesting show, just one after another.
Certainly do.
And who do we have today?
Today we have Shayda Nanji. She's a registered professional counselor and an emotional freedom technique practitioner. So she's going to tell us a bit more about what that means and how it's useful.
Shayda, it's nice to have you here. Now you have a I want to talk about EFT and the different applications and techniques within the discipline. But you are a registered professional counselor. Now, everybody else has been a registered or registered provisional psychologist. So this is a little different designation. Tell us about it.
So my designation, as I said, is a registered professional counselor, and I am registered with the Canadian Professional Counselors Association. So my path to becoming counselor has been perhaps different from the others that you may have interviewed so far. And it was the first, it's a shorter duration. And I've now been a registered professional counselor for about 4 years, just about.
Okay. And so you are with Power Psychology and Associates, and you are a EFT practitioner. So tell us about EFT and being an EFT practitioner.
So EFT practitioner, actually EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's otherwise known as tapping. My path to becoming an EFT practitioner was actually influenced by my supervisor, because once I had registered with the CPCA, the Canadian Professional Counselors Association, to become fully registered, we need to have 600 hours of training under supervision, so to speak. And my supervisor is a trainer in EFT, and it just so happens that she said, "Oh, I'm doing this training. Why don't you come?" And I said, "Okay, I'm learning. I'm on the learning pathway here. I learned something new." And I basically just I was very impressed by the training. I was impressed by the results that it was showing. So I took all the courses, did the exams, and have become a registered EFT practitioner now. And I've done all 3 levels of training. Yes.
That's so good. And so then we were talking a little bit before the show started about the kinds of things that people could benefit, or what kind of things that are going on in their life that they could receive benefit from an EFT practitioner. So you talked about a couple things that were interesting to me, which was I talked to everybody about it: sports performance and weight loss. And the reason it's of interest to me is because I've gone through my own sort of transition, lost 110 pounds, and have added fitness now to like a long-term walking. And I know what kind of things I went through, what kind of mental struggles I go through and have gone through. So it's both sports performance, pushing myself to walk further and further, and dealing with basically a food addiction that had turned into an obesity problem. So in those 2 realms, how does EFT interact, and how would people interact, with that?
So tapping, basically what it does is the tapping is all about mind-body connection. So there are things that are going on in our minds that affect our bodies, and vice versa. What tapping does is it just sends signals to our brain area where, certain stresses, like, because when you're talking about food and food addictions, there are lots, cravings, and everything is, that's basically what it affects. It's how you look at food, and how you process those emotions around food. And when we're tapping, what we're doing is actually we're tapping on those acupressure points on our body, and it's sending a signal to that part of our brain, which changes our brain pathways and how we look at certain things. It keeps our body calm, and we're able to process things better rather than just reacting to something. So if you're craving something and you've got a chocolate cake in front of you and you're saying, I've got to eat it, I've got to eat it. Well, if you start tapping on that, then the way you process that, it's sort of, as I said, it brings that calm to your body. That part of your brain that is just fires up um, automatically gets calmed down, and we're able to process that craving in a different way. And so that changes that perception of how we do things. And that's how tapping really works. And similarly with sports performance, sometimes, we have our limiting beliefs that, oh, I can't do this, or I can't run as fast, or I want to win this, this 400-meter race or whatever. So by tapping, what you're doing is you're processing those emotions, and you're also you rewiring your brain to look at things differently. And so it helps in that way enhance your performance as well. It's because the way you process those emotions and you work with them then.
So then, are you teaching people then what the so you're dealing with like a somatic or a nervous system or the body energy system, and then this is so you're saying you're using acupressure research and technology. So you're teaching people where these points are, and they're doing this themselves, or they're coming in, and as a practitioner, you're doing the acupressure tapping. How does that work?
Well, this has all been done and been researched. And so with the EFT, if we can talk about the tapping points right now, or it's where that research actually started from, and how those practitioners in the early days in the 70s and 80s were noticing about this energy connection in our bodies. So when we're talking about tapping points, there are certain tapping points that have now been identified. And of course, there are many others if you do. But these are generally what are accepted nowadays and are usually worked on. And in which order, sometimes people do them differently, that's okay. But so when a client comes in and you're talking about something, they might come in and say, I'm feeling very angry, let's say, for the sake of argument, and so what we do is when we start tapping, we talk about accepting that anger, that I feel angry, and I accept myself. So there's two parts, and then you start certainly tapping on those points which have already been researched and studied, and you
want to do a demo, the two of us, so you can kind of show him how it works?
Sure. So absolutely. So as I was saying earlier before we started, that if we want to calm ourselves down before the interview, so I could start by saying, and we start on the side of our palm, and you can go along with me, is to say, I've got a lot of anxiety. So it sounds, now it sounds counterintuitive to say I've got a lot of anxiety, because all this time people have been talking about positive affirmations, right? So we are accepting it, that I've got a lot of anxiety, and I choose to completely and totally accept myself. So there's two parts of it. There's the problem that we're acknowledging, and the fact that we're accepting ourselves with the problem. And we sort of do this about 3 times. It sort of helps us tune into what exactly. So I have a lot of anxiety, and I choose to accept myself.
I have a lot of anxiety, and I choose to accept myself. So as the client, you would be repeating that 3 times.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I have a lot of anxiety,
and I choose
to accept myself.
Accept myself.
I have a lot of anxiety about this upcoming interview.
Anxiety, and I choose to accept myself.
And I choose to accept myself. And then we'll just pick, and so what we do then is just pick up on one or two words on that, and then we go down to the eyebrow, inside the eyebrow here. A lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety.
Anxiety.
To the side of your eye, a lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety.
And then under the eye where the bone is, we'll say, I've got a lot of anxiety.
Anxiety.
This anxiety about the interview. And then just under the lip, we call it the chin area, a lot of anxiety.
Anxiety.
And then just down to the collarbone, have a lot of anxiety. And then we just go down to under our arm here, about 4 fingers down from our armpit. It's a lot of anxiety. And then right in the middle on the top of the head, got anxiety about this interview. And then we just take a deep breath and see where we are. So before a client would start tapping, I would ask them, what is your level of anxiety? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is right up there, and 1 is 0, oh, I'm so totally relaxed. And so this is very subjective, and they give it a scale, and they might say, oh, it's a 6 or a 7, whatever it is. And then you also ask them, are you feeling it in the body? Sometimes people might feel that I'm getting short of breath because I've got a lot of anxiety, right? Or I've got this tightness in my chest. So we would tune into our body as well. So once we've finished this complete round of tapping, as we call it, this is one round of tapping. We take a deep breath and we do a check-in and ask, well, where's your anxiety now? And they might say, oh, it's gone down to a 4 or a 3. Or they might say it's the same. Then we do more until it comes down, the level comes down. And the tightness goes away, feels less, less intense sort of thing. Or sometimes as people are tapping, something else might come up, and it might be, oh, I don't think I'm anxious about the interview, but this other thing came up. So whatever that other thing is, so that we could tap on that other thing that comes up. And that's how EFT we find is extremely useful, is we're calming the body and tuning into that particular emotion. Sometimes that is not even what's really brought us here. It might be something different.
Because things they get layered up, right? So you start.
Exactly.
Now, is that the only tapping points, or there's tapping points all over?
Well, there are tapping points all over, but certain tapping points will not be used for, like, say, pregnant mothers, because, and so on and so forth. And some are just, way down by the ankle. So there are many tapping points, but these have been found to be very general, very effective, and these are the points that the studies have been done on for 10, 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a series about, we're talking about maybe 10 years ago, a very high level, very high pressure negotiations. And there was one gentleman, and required to read lots of documents quickly, as these negotiations were moving, and I'll take my glasses off, and he was doing a thing. He would press his face, right, with his hands, and it almost was the same tapping points. And I wonder if he'd learned that, or he just stumbled, by reading and finally is realizing, if I touch myself like this, my anxiety comes down, right? So, or maybe he has EFT training and he just can't tap, but he can press, right? So he can get away,
yes.
So it's not. And I noticed that there is a little bit of a residual sort of feeling, right? That after not at first, but after all the points were tapped, like there's a physiological, trigger. There's something triggered there. So.
That's right. So there's that physiological effect in our bodies.
Very interesting.
And yeah, sometimes people feel that they might, actually sometimes people say after an hour of tapping in session, they're very relaxed, but they say, I'm feeling very tired now. Or they might get some tingling in their fingers. or people start to yawn. So there are definitely physiological symptoms that do occur, but it's all telling you that there's emotions, there's energy being released into your system.
The
And
same
that's why.
Sorry
I'm
to cut.
sorry?
Didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say the same things happen with EMDR.
Absolutely, yes.
I think they work very much in the same way, and there's studies now at Dawson Church, I think is the guy's name or something like that. We've done a lot of studies comparing EFT and EMDR, and I think they're pretty equally effective.
Yes.
But two different processes, right?
Two different modalities, right, but equally comparable.
Yeah.
I think EMDR has come to be recognized as a gold standard in the newer wave of therapies that we're using, and EFT is sort of catching up on it. But as you were saying, if I can just go back to saying what this gentleman was doing, and that's another thing, is when we're talking to clients and they're anxious about an upcoming meeting. So just applying that pressure definitely helps, and this gentleman would have learned about it. And because, when you're doing this, like you're at a meeting and you do this, like people might say, okay.
Unless everybody knows how, right? They know what you're doing, right?
We need to commit this person, right? Like there's something weird going on here. But just doing that, just applying that pressure on those certain points, or even just holding here and rubbing those points down here. I mean, this looks very, very normal, but you're actually calming your body at the time. And you, as I said, once you calm your body gets calmer. You're able to process your emotions, your thoughts better, and so then you're able to respond better as well, rather than react.
Now, I want to bring something that I learned when I visited with Claire Atchison. She talked about a portion of our mind, our brain at the front that tracks our ability, our adult mind. I can't remember what she used. So now, yeah. So I can see, in a fully developed human being, how this would be just instantly, useful and effective. What about littles? You know what I mean? Is this something that little ones can use, or?
That's really good.
Yeah.
Tapping, you mean, the EFT?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, before the interview started, teachers are using it in the classroom as well, to get the children to calm down. Because, they can't sit for so many hours and they get edgy up after a point. And when the weather was very, very cold early on before COVID-19, and they had to be indoors the whole time. And children by nature move all the time. You can't have them sitting in one place. So, and it doesn't require an hour of it. It only requires a few minutes, 2 or 3 rounds, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And it brings that level of agitation down quite a bit.
It's so good. And so how do people just contact Power Psychology and Associates and go to the website and you're right there? How do they get a hold of you?
You got it.
Yes.
She's on our website. You can book her online. Because she's a registered professional counselor, she might be more accessible price-wise for some people, because it's a bit of a lower price range than the registered provisional or registered psychologist. So that's nice. We like to have different ranges so we can make counseling more accessible, right?
Mm-hmm. And then I imagine you guys, you're on counseling teams. You're helping people with different therapies and modalities of therapy, right? So different things. So that's excellent. That's excellent. And I apologize. I just don't have a lot of questions because it is not anything that I was expecting. This is so interesting. So if there's more to tell me, feel free.
So one more thing, sorry, Brittany, go ahead.
I was just going to say, talk about the group, please.
Yes. So before I go to the group meetings, there's just one more thing is when you talk about working as a team. So EFT can be used as a standalone therapy, but it's excellent as well with combining it with talk therapy. So sometimes I know Sharon has sent me clients. She's been working with them, in a different capacity, but sometimes just to help process their emotions, she sent me clients, and we've just done EFT work with her, with the client rather. And the client can still go on seeing their own therapist for their other things. There may be some, they may be able to process their emotions and get rid of it, but now they might need some communication tools or some other tools, and so they can work with their own therapist to do that.
Or
So
in the
yes,
crisis, it can be really helpful for crisis work too, right? If you
yes,
can't get into your therapist for a couple of weeks or whatever might be going on, and you need some crisis work, this can be really helpful just to kind of take the edge off in the meantime, right?
that's right. So in between seeing their own therapists, definitely. So it's not just that you can only see an EFT practitioner and can't see anybody else. You can. And that's the beauty of it. And of course, the other beauty is it's a self-help too. Once you've got the technique and whatever, then you can practice it at home as well. Something might come up and you can just start tapping away as long as you've got those tapping charts and whatever. And whatever. And you don't even have to necessarily say a lot of fancy words or whatever. Just focus on what's bothering you in the moment. That's all it is. And just bring that calm down to your body.
So good.
So yes, and the talking about EFT groups. So this is also really works very well because when we are tapping with the EFT group, you might have 7, 8 people around. We're sitting around, and I could be working with one person on whatever is their concern at the moment, and as we're talking and tapping, we encourage the other group members to also be tapping on their own issues. So while we're working one-on-one with one person, and we're particularly talking about their issues, the rest of the group could identify whatever is bothering them in the moment, and we all tap together. And so what happens is they're also processing their issues at the same time, and we get what we call borrowed benefits. Because at the end of the group, when we're all done and we've tapped with 4 or 5 people, I find that I've also processed a lot of my own issues that have been, bothering me perhaps. And so I benefit as well from tapping with them. So there is this borrowed benefit effects. And people come to groups just to tap on a few things that's bothering them. And they come to group once a week, every Friday for 6 months, a year they've been coming. Just, 15 minutes of tapping and they're good. So it really helps.
Okay, so this is all of this information for the groups all on the website and everything's there?
Yes, we just have one more last session this Friday.
Oh, okay.
And we've been doing it on Zoom.
Oh, okay, it's on Zoom, okay.
We have been doing it on Zoom.
The August group, right?
That's right. But for August group, we'll plan to sort of start doing face-to-face because we have enough space there that for 4 or 5 people, 6 people even, we can do a social distancing quite well.
That's in Sherwood Park or that's in Edmonton?
That's in Edmonton.
It's in the Edmonton office?
It's out in that office, and we can fit 6 people socially distanced.
Yes.
Very,
That's
very, very
office.
interesting. That's good. Yeah, no, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so the tune in with Power Psychology. Find your joy again.
Thank you.
With your host, Brittany Meredith, and our interesting guest, Shayda Nanji. Very interesting. Thank you. EFT.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, on the Health and Wellness Channel, only on TVU.